Welcome back to And Now for Something Completely Machinima podcast. I'm Ricky Grove, your host, and we're talking with our pals Tracy Harwood, Damien Valentine, and good old Phil Rice. Well, this week we're going to be looking at Damien's machinima picks. Now, he has picked two short, interesting films that are shot in a flying simulator. And boy, are they interesting. The first one is Ghost by J.P. Fair, and the second one is DCS, The Right Stuff by J.P. Fair as well. Excuse me if I've mispronounced that. So, Damien, why don't you tell us about these films? Let's start out with Ghost.
Yes, so as always, my machinima picks were completely by accident. It's one of those things that YouTube recommends to me, and it recommended Ghost to me first, and I thought this looks interesting, and so I watched it, and I was really impressed by the way it's shot, because my understanding is this flight simulator is a highly realistic. Like, you could play it, if you knew how to play the game, you could probably fly the jets in it as well, because that's how detailed it is. And so
what's the name of the flight simulator?
It's called DCS. I don't know what that stands for. I'm sure it means something to flight simulator enthusiasts.
Right.
Yeah, Ghost was the one that came up to me first, and I watched it, and it's kind of got this. You feel like it's going to be this sort of dogfight combat movie, but it's kind of got a mild horror element to it as well, which you do not expect from a flight simulator. And I don't want to go into it too much. You have to watch it because it's part of the story. But it's got these two pilots, and they've been told that that the US Air Force pilots, and that they've been told there's an RAF distress call has been picked up, and they have to go and investigate what's happened. And there's no trace of the RAF pilots, and there's this sort of myth of this enemy pilot who's meant to be really good, and of course they encounter him, and there's this whole dogfight thing that happens, and it was shot so well. It was very intense. You were not sure how it's going to end, and you want the good guys to win, and all of that. And because it is such a realistic game, I don't know how they managed to fly the planes and control the cameras, because I imagine the camera work has to be very tough to control as well. But yeah, I know. I just really enjoyed it, and I thought this is going to be my pick. And then, what do you guys think of it?
Well, I think they may have done what you often see in machinima, which is have a separate pilot who is not involved in the action be the camera.
That makes sense.
That's probably how they worked that. But I was engaged in that film. It's interesting. The story is part of a ghost tradition. I live with my partner who is an expert on ghosts and Halloween. She has written 2 books on ghosts, the history of ghosts. So I've gotten a lot of background on ghost sort of storytelling tropes. And this is one of the tropes, which is well, I'm not going to give the ending away because it would be unfair to listeners, but it's a pretty standard trope in certain types of ghost movies. And I thought that was sort of the weakest element of it, because you had this realistic flying, and all of the other parts realistic, but the story ending was not realistic. It was kind of a fancy, and it didn't ring true. However, the actual dogfighting and everything had me engaged. I mean, I was, as the planes were swooping, I was turning in my chair. I was so engaged with it.
I was doing that too.
Fun film. It was a fun film. I also wonder whether this is a gender specific film, whether it's the kind of film that guys would really glom onto as opposed to women. Be interested to see what Tracy has to say about it. But I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
I did too. I recognized the trope, although I couldn't name it because I don't have the kind of education that you guys do on that, you and your partner. But I sensed it, like as I watched the story unfold, and I thought, okay, this has a familiarity to it. Thought it was pretty well executed, nonetheless. The realism, especially on the shots of the planes themselves, like when it first started playing, I thought, okay, so is this is this like live action footage? I mean, I was duped. Like it was, and once it gets to the cockpit shots, and there's kind of these very limited movements, and it's a little bit pixelated character. I thought, okay, it's a very high end flight sim, which they typically don't put a whole lot of effort in the. They're not expecting cockpit close ups, right? So, we've talked several times on past episodes of this show about the role of editing to give a sense of continuity to where the orientation, the sequence of shots really has to be done just the right way for you to get enough of a sense of where you are and who is who and what's happening. And that's really hard with planes, and we have no actual faces to give us that, to anchor to that, like it would in a Top Gun movie, for example. They'll inevitably take off part of the mask so we can see, oh, it's Goose. Oh, it's. So I thought they did so well in this movie at the editing of those shots. A dogfight. We've never actually analyzed a dogfight by that lens on the show, I don't think. We've talked about other action sequences. Maybe even a car chase or two, or a pursuit of some kind, or an assault of one force against the other. And those are challenging, but a dogfight, you're in, 360-degree space in every direction. There's no real rules on where stuff can move. It's just incredibly difficult. And they did so well with it to where there's no point in the story where I didn't know what was going on. From the visual cues of the editing, just masterfully done. Very enjoyable. I loved it. I watched it again as soon as I finished it. Just to experience it again. It's a great short. It's the perfect length, and just wonderful stuff.
Tracy?
Well,
Tracy?
I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed this as well. It's DCS, Digital Combat Simulator. That's what it stands for.
Perfect.
And it really was. It was brilliant. I can honestly say, you don't often say that about an air battle, do you? that it was great. But you know what? I was thinking about, why was that so great? I think what really held this together for me was the voice acting and the characterization through the helmets. Because you didn't see any faces, of course you didn't see any faces, but there were definitely characters there. You've got the person back at base, and then you've got these two characters, and then this ghost. And
very distinct characters.
Very distinct.
Very distinct.
I think it was all done through the voice act, which was really outstanding. It really took you on a journey. I thought the editing was brilliantly well done. I actually was surprised at the ending. I don't know what I expected of the ending, but it did surprise me. And in the end, I actually thought, well, how on earth can you have a horror movie in this sort of genre? But you know what? It delivered a horror movie. It really did. It felt very Top Gun like. Actually, I thought that as well, Phil. But I also thought that in terms of the level of the story, because the whole thing just was professional. It felt professional.
Yeah, it did.
I loved the sound design for it. It generated this kind of really intense feeling of drama. I think the thing that stood out for me, if I can be critical at all, I've no idea really how realistic the actual words might have been for the time period in those particular aircraft. Because you know what, I lived through the shoulder pad era of the 1980s, and there wasn't much swearing that I can recall in the early 90s. Now I don't know what you guys, maybe Damien less so, but you guys can remember this. Swearing wasn't really so much a thing as it is now, and there was quite a lot of swearing in this. And it felt, therefore, for me, quite a modern take on a 1991 film being, as it was set, 1991 over Iraq is what it was supposed to be. The shots where the camera did some zooming, just sort of, where on earth in the sky are these planes? I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
The fact that it was sort of maintaining kind of mid and then near, and then suddenly this zoom out. That was brilliant. I thought that was really, really very well done.
Really smart filmmaking.
Yeah, very smart filmmaking. I had I had the sense, if you like, of someone being there actually trying to track the action, not in the film, but somebody trying to track the action, but that they didn't know where to be to do it. And yet that was another invisible character to me. That was really cool. I thought that was really neat, the way that was done. And but it all felt really, really well stitched together. Definitely gave the impression of a super fast dogfight. I mean, how on earth you can get that sense across of it being a super fast dogfight, I have no idea, but they did that.
Yep.
The speed, the distance, the height, you got a clear sense of all of that in that game environment. I thought that was incredibly well done. And that evasive action and behavior, that was just great. I don't know obviously very much about this game, but it seems that the creators of this kind of had actually attempted to customize assets. And when I was looking at the comments on it, they clearly made these assets available as well. So they'd created the liveries on the aircraft. So maybe they'd done quite a lot of modding for the action too.
I see.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying that's a possibility. There is just one thing I will say in passing. I checked out is his name JP Ferrer? JP Ferrer. I checked his website out. And got to say, it includes both commercial and personal projects that he's worked on. And you may or may not be surprised that he is, in fact, an established director. He makes movie trailers. He's a movie trailer editor, and he's a VFX artist.
Neat.
And what I thought you'd like to know about is that he has worked on the French Dune trailers and also the Alien Isolation digital series trailer, among many others.
So small independent films.
Yeah.
He knows his stuff. I have to say, I think it came through. The more I knew about it, the more I sort of read about the guy, the more I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense, really. So
Yes, indeed.
for the quality of the film that we're seeing here. So this guy has definitely got some chops, and that comes through in the next film as well.
Right.
But yeah, I loved it, Damien. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Let's move on to your next one, which is also by the same director.
Yeah, so after I finished watching The Ghost, I thought this is going to be my pick. And then I submitted it to our little thing that we post our film selections for the month. And I thought, okay, I'm going to see what else he's done. So I went to his channel, and his most recent project is called The Right Stuff, and he's got it there, and there's trailers, and there's some behind the scenes videos as well, which they're worth checking out as well, because you can see how he put it all together. And I watched it, and it's a true story based on Chuck Yeager's one of his test flights of an experimental jet, and it doesn't go well. And the film covers the whole situation there. It's a bit longer than The Ghost, but it kind of needs to be to tell that particular story. And I was thinking maybe I should choose this one instead of The Ghost, but I really like The Ghost as well, so ended up choosing the two films. Again, it wasn't a test flight I knew anything about. Obviously I've heard of Chuck Yeager, but I don't know his whole history of everything he did. So I watched the film. I was very impressed by it, and then I had to go and check. Yes, it did actually happen. And I would imagine that JP has actually done a lot of research to make sure that his film is as accurate as it can be based on whatever accounts he's got access to. Because he's a director that you get the feel that he puts a lot of effort into his videos to make sure all the details are as accurate as possible, especially using a game like DCS, which again is very highly realistic, as I've already said. And I looked at the thumbnail, and he's won loads of awards from various festivals for this particular film. And The Ghost has won 4, and I think the right stuff is 112 or something like that. So it's obviously been very well received, and I could not decide between the two of them. So this month I chose both of them. What did you think of this one?
I'm glad you did, because it is a gem of a film. It's even better than Ghost. In fact, I would go so far as to say this is a near perfect machinima film. I'm sure Tracy will find something some detail that's missed in it, but I think it's perfect. And the reason why is because it does so many things so well. It tells a compelling historical film, almost like a documentary. The flying elements and the technical aspects of it did not overwhelm the storytelling. You're engaged. You're left with this breathlessness at the end of it because you don't know how even though you know how it's going to turn out, really, any general person will tell you they know how it's going to turn out. The film brings you so strongly into its world that you forget that, and you worry about what's going to happen. The shot selection, the editing, once again, the acting, first rate. The 12 minutes of the length of the film flew by. It was like it was over soon after it began. It's my favorite film of the year so far. I was so impressed with it and so interested in it. So thank you for picking it. I'm really glad. And I was wondering what would be like if we broke the film up into 4 pieces, took it to a gallery, made a big fancy special screens and all this stuff, and then each person had to go up to 4 separate rooms, whether it would classify as being gallery stuff. I suspect not.
But we would project it upside down.
Upside down, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
You have to sit in a pilot's chair, like an old
That's
pilot's
right.
chair.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And the audio would be turned way down, and there would be someone live in the gallery just reading Baudelaire.
Wow.
Just
naked.
Dark French poetry. Yeah.
Totally naked. Yeah.
I loved this film. I agree, Ricky. I think it's better than Ghost, which is saying something. It's perfectly balanced. Those elements you talked about, Ricky, the technical aspect and all of that, but then the storytelling and it's very easy for a documentary, even about something, let's say, exciting. It's very easy for a documentary to dilute the emotion down of that and not really engage you in the heart. You're just watching facts. Oh, okay, so he flew this thing and then that happened. No, this just was gripping. And I obviously I know who Chuck Yeager is. He's one of the better known people in the 20th century as far as Americans are concerned. Right up there with any president you can name during the century, or Thomas Edison or someone like that. And I always, speaking of Thomas Edison, Chuck Yeager is one that I'm always afraid that I'm going to find out that he was just a total dick or something, It seems like that happens to every major historical person in the US. It's like, FDR, he did all these great things. And then you find out he, was a jerk about this or whatever, or Thomas Edison. Oh yeah, he electrocuted an elephant. It's like, for Christ's sake, can I just have somebody? Michael Jordan. Oh, he gambles all the time. Come on. Chuck Yeager. I don't look up anything on Chuck Yeager because he's, I think, without cliche, an American hero, and he may have done something horrible that'll get him canceled today, but I don't care. I just like Chuck Yeager, and I'm going to leave it that way. So, and this movie was made for me. It's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. There's actually the life story of Chuck Yeager is a feature film, and I think it's got this same title, doesn't it? The Right Stuff.
It does.
Yeah. I saw that so long ago, I don't even remember anything about it. But so when I saw the title, I thought, oh, is he kind of doing like a trailer or whatever? But no, this is an encapsulated story of one of the test flights. And I mean, these guys, just unbelievable, the risk that they went through. This is not a unique story. Maybe what makes this story unique is that he survived.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
so many of these guys just perished, you know, trying these things. And
how do you get
So-
back into the plane after having that experience?
and he did. Yeah, and he did. And he wasn't crazy. Not by, you know, not by any clinical definition. So yeah, it's really, the right stuff is the perfect title, because it's talking about, you know, he's made a different stuff than most folks. It's like a, you know, firefighter who can run into the burning building kind of thing. It's most normal people wouldn't put themselves in those situations, but he was just driven in that way. So yeah, just a wonderful tribute to the guy, to the subject of the film, and just wonderful job telling the story. I have nothing to criticize about it at all. It's, you know, at least with the ghost, I could comment on the 45-degree angle look for the pilots. I didn't even, that was probably in this too. I didn't even notice it. Like, I was just enthralled. So wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
And now that we know that he's a pro, it makes sense, because this is pro stuff. This is what pro stuff looks like. And I don't mean pro just in terms of that he makes money, but in terms of the level of his skill.
His craft
skill. Yeah, his craft is just so good. So yeah, I'm a fan of this guy for sure, and we'll be watching his other stuff as well.
You'd often see somebody like this who is really enthused with the technical details of flying and everything, not having a solid enough story. But it was smart of him to use history and then to just stay out of the way of the story itself. Just dramatize that.
Agreed.
Because it's so exciting.
I would mention too, if Russell, if you listen to our podcast and you don't already know of this guy, Russell, of course, made a lot of flight sim movies back in the day. He would love this. He would echo a lot of what we're saying. I think this is how it's done. Great stuff.
I completely agree. Completely agree. I mean, what an impressive and compelling story about the early test flights. I mean, this is what it conveys to me. The sort of the early test flights, the pioneers of space flight. And in this case, it's a story that you don't know so much about Chuck Yeager, because actually what you know him for is the Breaking Sound Barrier record, or that's one I know of him.
Sure.
I think that was 1953, as I seem to recall from my notes.
Yeah.
But an amazing, distinguished career, and I think he flew with Armstrong as well at one point. So these guys were genuine pioneers of space flight, and this particular story was something that led directly to how NASA developed space flight, which is a fascinating story in itself.
Mm-hmm.
In actual fact, this guy died in 2020 at an amazing age of 97 years old.
Wow.
JP Ferry, as I understand, yeah, you can't imagine this guy would live that long, can you? But blimey. So he was inspired by the fact that Yeager had passed to make this film. And I think actually from what I saw of it and the way that I reacted to it, this is basically a Hollywood movie in 12 minutes. But also what struck me about it was a movie that which should have been, but was never made during this guy's lifetime. And it felt like you got the whole sense of the central part of this big production without the kind of, the I don't know, the rubbish girlfriend engagement, the bar fight, the post-party celebration, which is what you see in all these Hollywood movies. That's kind of like is it not? Is it not?
Yes.
No, you're right. You're totally right.
You're right.
So yeah, that's what sort of stood out for me. In fact, I think it turns out that once his military career had finished in real life California, that's when he made his appearance in the actual film called The Right Stuff, which was about the sound barrier being broken, which was, I think, made in 1983 when I looked it up. And he was a bartender in that, apparently. And that is because, of course, where most pilots spend most of their time, it's in the bar, isn't it? Not, they spend as much time in the bar as they do in the training facilities.
Singing songs,
singing, whatever,
serenading ladies. That's
whatever
right.
whatever they do, they party, and they party hard. I've actually been, another story, but I have been involved in around the world flight race, and I've been involved in pilot parties and stuff. And my God, do they know how to party? But dead serious the next day, and it's all because their life could be over the next day. So party hard is what they do. And that film really, I think that 1983 film wasn't actually about this incredible feat, which I think to me stands out more than almost the sound breaking, barrier breaking one. For me, it drew me in right from the very start. I loved the scene setting on the Air Force Base, and then the takeoff, that that first sort of main scene that you see where he takes off through that kind of heat haze. That was the point I thought we're watching something a little bit more well developed than a traditional machinima. It isn't just a plane taking off. You saw the plane take off through this heat haze, and then you kind of got that backdraft bit through the plane and whatnot. Absolutely amazing.
Details of it.
The detail, absolutely amazing. The sound design, that mix between the radio conversation, the aircraft, and the music, outstanding. I thought for most of this, what I was actually listening to before I sort of started to look into it, what I thought I was listening to was actually a real film or real life footage of actual events. But when I looked at it, it wasn't. It was Ferry had written this script based on books and real life accounts from Yeager's autobiography. So there was a huge amount of work that had gone into the creation of the film by Ferrer and also by his team. And I thought the pacing of the story was really clever, the ambience, the kind of the positivity, actually, the feeling of history in the making through the visuals. Incredible. I have got a criticism.
Oh no.
Which, I don't know whether
I knew it.
Well, you hear me out. It's the only thing that spoils it, and it didn't really spoil it, but it was the only thing that I thought, no, that's not right, was when there was a shot to a field of cows, okay? And, they were on the ground when the pilot was supposedly breaking the sound barrier. Now, we have very rarely, but I have heard the Eurofighters being, scrambled over near to us, and they kind of accidentally break the sound barrier, and it sounds like the most horrendous explosion. So these cows didn't really even jump that much. They looked up, but they didn't really jump that much. I'm assuming that's what was going on. So I expected more of a boom and more of a reaction from the cows.
You're telling me your criticism of this absolutely brilliant film is that the cows didn't
react. That's it. It's the only thing.
Welcome back. We're always happy to have you back when you go away.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and defend that criticism because I noticed it too, but I'm going to assume that those cows have been in that pasture near an airfield where sonic booms just don't alert them the same way anymore. They've heard countless ones.
Good point.
Yeah.
So they're desensitized.
That's why. Not limitations of the game engine.
No.
Oh, thank you, Phil. I was really starting to hyperventilate there.
Yeah. But that's the only thing. I mean, the conversation between the ground crew and the pilot was brilliant. It was really dramatic. It was just bob on, I thought.
And then at the end, when he's in serious crisis and they're trying to resolve it, you could tell that they were excited, they were elevated, but they were still professional.
Yes.
So that they managed to combine those two elements of fear and competence at the same time in their performances.
Yes.
Which is accurate, by the way. From every recording I've ever heard, the people at NASA who are on the comms and the people they are the most cool characters you could imagine in terms of staying professional at a time when, many people would freak out.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the qualities of the people who work in that field, that the people who have that ability, they rise to the top, So I think that wasn't accidental at all. It was very much that is the way it is.
Yeah.
It's part of what is special about the people in that field.
Yeah. Exactly. And the film, the whole soundtrack, which, as I understand it, did include some aspects of original sound and visual effects, which, as I understand it, were added for historical accuracy and dramatic purposes. But the whole thing was so well done. This guy is an absolutely masterful storyteller in this
He
DCS
sure is.
world. And it looks like he continues to make other films as well. So I'm definitely going to keep watching out to see what he's doing on this.
Me too.
As I understand it, this one took him 2 years to make, 210 shots to complete, and I'm not a bit surprised. It actually, to me, I mean, just to reflect on your comments there, Phil, Ricky, it seems to me this is actually a really important application of machinima, this kind of historical,
I think so too.
recreation. We've seen it used before, some to lesser effect than others, and of course, the flight sims we've seen before. The one that came to mind was actually shown at the festival that I did in 2007 by Wingmen Productions, I think. And they'd used IL-2 to create this story that had been inspired by true events about the use of these Gloucester Sea Gladiator biplanes in this air defense battle in defense of Malta during World War II. It was nominated for one of the awards, but it didn't actually win. I think it won at the 2008 Machinima Festival in New York. I think it won that year. It was an hour-long machinima. I think we had it in a feature-length machinima. And the film was called, if you remember, it was called Faith, Hope and Charity. Is that the one that Russell made?
I remember that one, yeah.
Do you remember, is that Russell's film, or is that another one? Was Russell one of the team? I think Russell was one of the team.
I think so.
I think he was one of the Wingmen production people. Faith, Hope and Charity. But it wasn't in this quality, I have to say. It wasn't made in this way. But the other historical film that does come to mind that was brilliant was Prasenberg Ridge by Martin Bell that we reviewed last year. And that actually was also based on a book about the central character. So, and Martin also has, production chops as well. I think that sort of the ability to sort of create the script and then film it in the way that these guys have is amazing. It really shows there's a lot of skill behind this, I think. Great pick. Loved it.
Great pick. And I was so happy that it didn't have that Hollywood trapping of excessive music soundtrack. You know what I mean? Where, they'd have this boom, 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 boom in the crisis moments and everything. He just threw away with all of that and let the story stand on its own. Perfect. Well, thank you, Damien. You did some great tricks. We'll definitely be paying attention to J.P. Fair. The two films that we looked at and reviewed were Ghost by J.P. Fair and DCS, The Right Stuff, a short film in 2022 by J.P. Fair. Well, that's it. If you have comments on our picks, or you have a difference of opinion, or you think we missed something, contact us at talk@completelymachinima.com. Show notes, and thank you, Tracy, for doing the show notes, are at our main website, completelymachinima.com. Well, that's it for this episode. We'll be back with another pick next week. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.